My name is Taisha Brooks. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how my sister slapped me at her wedding because I wouldn't give her my penthouse, and how I made sure the world saw exactly who she really was. It happened in a ballroom so grand it could have housed royalty, chandeliers glowing like frozen fire, champagne flowing like the love everyone pretended to feel. But behind all that sparkle, behind the pearl-lined smiles and polished veneers, was the same cold calculation I'd known my whole life. And this time, it came dressed in white lace and fake concern. I had shown up on time. Floor-length emerald gown, hair pinned tight, no jewelry, no fuss. The kind of clean elegance that says, I didn't come to compete, but I still won't be ignored. My sister Megan's wedding was at the Larimore Hotel in Providence, historic, expensive, over the top. The kind of place that screams legacy, even if the people walking its halls were barely holding up the illusion of family. Megan, my younger sister, had always been the light. That's what my mother called her. She just sparkles, doesn't she, Taisha? I remember being 16 when I first heard her say it. I remember standing in the hallway, holding a box of laundry, while Megan pranced around in our mother's heels. Even back then, it stung. Not because I wanted the attention, but because I knew I'd never get it. I built my own life with no one's help. Law degree from Northeastern, 3 jobs at once to cover rent, books, and tuition. While Megan flitted around Europe on our parents' dime, calling it soul-searching, I was writing court briefs in basements and pouring coffee in 2 shifts back-to-back. My parents said I was too serious, too cold, too manly. But every time a card declined or a check bounced, guess who they called? So when I bought my penthouse in Beacon Hill, after starting my own firm, Brooks Legal and Consulting, and building it from scratch with blood and spit, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need applause. Just silence. Peace. A space that was mine, untouched by family guilt or the cheap perfume of obligation. 2 months later, Megan texted. My card got declined at the OB visit. Can you help me out? I didn't respond. That silence turned into a phone call from my mother. A decent person knows how to make sacrifices. Your sister's about to become a mother. And you're up there living alone in that cold rooftop apartment. For what? Cold? That was the word that always came up. Cold, because I didn't give away what I'd earned. Cold, because I asked questions no one wanted to answer. Cold, because I'd learned to breathe in spaces that didn't choke me with guilt. The wedding should have just been a polite affair. Show up, smile, pose for photos, and disappear after the second toast. But instead, they dragged me into a private lounge just before the ceremony. My mother in pearls and plum lipstick. My father scanning me like I was a stock that had underperformed. Megan entered last, still holding her champagne glass, her eyes twinkling like she was about to pitch a business idea. We need to discuss something. Just family, my mother said with syrupy sweetness. I already knew what was coming. I could feel it in my bones, the way you feel a storm long before the clouds appear. We want you to consider transferring your apartment to Megan and Brian, my father said. A beat of silence. You're asking me to give them my penthouse? Not give. A swap, my mother chirped. Brian owns a 2-bedroom in Cranston. Quiet. Perfect for someone single. You live alone, Megan added, as if that disqualified me from space, from ownership, from dignity. I set my glass down. You dragged me in here during a wedding to ask me to trade a nearly $2 million penthouse for a suburban starter home. Because I don't have a husband or child? My father grumbled, it's a reasonable suggestion. I laughed. I actually laughed. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. You know what's funny? I said, turning toward Megan. You wear a Vera Wang gown, throw a 6-figure wedding in a historic hotel, and then ask me to hand over my home like it's some unused coat. And now I'm the selfish one. You can make everyone uncomfortable today, Megan said with that saccharine smile that always followed her manipulation, but you're the one who'll have to live with that loneliness for the rest of your life. I paused, then said, I'd rather live alone in a home I built than shove myself into the illusion of family that only calls when they want something. I turned and walked out. 10 steps later, I heard the frantic clip of heels behind me. Taisha, my mother hissed. You can't walk out like this. We stood under a chandelier so massive, it looked like a frozen sun. Guests buzzed nearby, unaware of the battle unraveling just a wall away. She's your sister, my mom said. That apartment could be a new start for them. And I don't deserve a new start of my own? Before she could answer, Megan stormed out, train flowing like a royal procession, and said, You still haven't changed. Still acting superior, still performing. You hate my attitude, I said, but you want my home. You've never cared about anyone but yourself. All I asked for was respect. Not love with strings. Not silence in exchange for being tolerated. Megan stepped closer. Her eyes narrowed. You're going to grow old alone in that apartment, Tisha. And no one will even remember you existed. And just like that, she slapped me. It wasn't just a slap. It was every insult, every guilt trip, every manipulation packed into one sharp strike. My glass hit the floor. Shards exploded like confetti on marble. The room froze. Eyes. Gasps. Whispers. And there she stood, hand still raised, like a queen who thought she'd just won. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't the same girl they used to shame into silence. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. No shaking. No hesitation. I typed, hit send, and looked up. Megan's eyes twitched. What are you doing? She snapped. Sharing the truth, I said. And for the first time in my life, they couldn't stop me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just stood there in the middle of a glittering ballroom, cheeks stinging, surrounded by champagne flutes and shocked guests, and sent the truth. One message. That's all it took. Pressured to hand over Penthouse to sister during wedding. Refused. Got slapped in public. 3 family members witnessed, none intervened. Roughly 200 people present. I sent it to a private group I created years ago, lawyers, reporters, ethics officers, media strategists. Not for drama. For moments just like this. When truth needed speed. When silence would no longer protect the right people. I didn't say Megan's full name. I didn't have to. The people who mattered already knew. Those who'd seen the warning signs of how I was treated. Those who respected what I built. My phone buzzed in my hand within seconds. 1. 2. Then 5 messages. Lauren Fields, senior reporter at the Boston Ledger. Taisha, are you okay? If this goes public, I'm covering it myself. Marcus Yates, a media crisis strategist I'd worked with on a wrongful termination case. I saw it. Standing 10 feet away. If you want to control the narrative, I'm ready. Judge Rachel Whitmore, one of the most powerful women in New England law. What happened to you tonight isn't just personal. It's cultural. Call me when you're ready. I looked up from my screen slowly. Around me, guests were pulling out their phones. A few had seen what happened. Others were whispering, glancing from me to Megan, trying to piece together the reality behind the bride's radiant smile. My mother grabbed my wrist. You're ruining your sister's big day. I turned to her. Calm. Controlled. Beyond the reach of guilt now. I didn't ruin anything. I simply shared what just happened, word for word. No edits. No revenge. Just facts. Megan stepped closer now, her voice laced with panic. You had no right. No? I raised my phone. You hit me. In public. In front of 200 people. And you think the problem is me sharing that? My father, who hadn't said a word during the confrontation, suddenly snatched my phone from my hand. This is private family business. You shouldn't be airing it to the world. I didn't even flinch. Then you should have stopped your daughter from assaulting me in public. That shut him up. But it didn't stop the unraveling. It was already happening. I could see it in the eyes of the guests. The way some were holding their phones tightly, watching videos that were now circulating. A 13-second clip. The slap. The glass. Me standing still, composed, while Megan turned her back like a smug victor. And our parents? Statues. Silent, complicit. I didn't even need to share it. Someone else had. Maybe a waiter. Maybe a distant cousin. But the internet doesn't care about intentions, it only knows drama, hypocrisy, and poetic justice. I stepped back. Straightened my spine. Spoke clearly so everyone near the ballroom doors could hear me. You've spent your lives teaching me not to embarrass anyone. But never once did you worry about how much you embarrassed me. And then I left. I walked through the doors like I was walking out of an old life. Behind me, the music slowly started up again. But it wasn't the same. Laughter didn't return. The energy shifted. Eyes followed me not with judgment, but with something else, recognition. They had witnessed something they couldn't unsee. By the time I got to the hotel entrance, my phone had buzzed another 15 times. One message was from Claire Montgomery, head of the Massachusetts State Bar Ethics Committee. I saw the clip. I hope you're okay. If you want to talk about what this could mean, not just for you, but for every woman navigating toxic family expectations, call me. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about a slap. It was about a lifetime of being told to shrink, to apologize for succeeding, to give because that's what good daughters do. To be useful, but not bold. Smart, but not successful. Present, but never enough. That slap was just the final chapter. Everything before it, every time I bailed them out, stayed silent, paid a bill I never saw returned, was the real story. And now it was out. By morning, the story had grown legs. A Boston-based social media account posted the video with the caption, "Bride's sister slapped during luxury wedding after refusing to give up penthouse." The comments rolled in like a tide. This is horrifying. Toxic family entitlement on full display. She stood her ground. I felt that. If this was reversed, we'd call it abuse. So let's call it that now. My name wasn't on the post. But people knew. Especially those who mattered. Lauren called again. Don't go public yet. Let the video breathe. Let people form their opinions before you step in. This is your moment. You don't owe them silence anymore. And so, I stayed quiet. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't have to scream to be heard anymore. That silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious. Because I wasn't. Instead, I stood barefoot on the balcony of my Beacon Hill penthouse, glass of red wine in hand, the glow of Boston's skyline glittering like it finally saw me. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for a phone call, a guilt trip, a manipulation masked as motherly love. I was calm. Unshakably calm. The silence was doing its job. And outside that calm, the chaos had begun. By morning, the clip had been shared on 3 major Boston gossip accounts. A wedding guest, someone I hadn't even noticed at the reception, posted a follow-up story describing the whole confrontation, how I was ambushed in a private room and asked to hand over my home. How I said no. How I was slapped. How not one family member stood up for me. It went viral before noon. No names yet. But it didn't matter. The internet doesn't need names when the truth is that loud. By 1 p.m., I got a text from Tracy Maxwell, Meghan's ex-business partner from her advertising days. Ty, what happened? PR world's buzzing. Meghan's name is trending internally. Internally. The word echoed. Because that's how it starts, whispers in marketing circles, HR email threads, industry Slack channels. Whispers turn into questions. Questions turn into decisions. At 3:12 p.m., the first real blow landed. Lauren forwarded me a press statement from Bloom & Stone, the firm where Meghan worked as an associate creative director. I read the words slowly, knowing every syllable had been weighed like a courtroom verdict. We are aware of the video circulating online involving a member of our staff. The behavior displayed is inconsistent with the values we uphold as a firm that advocates for equality, respect, and professional integrity. Translation? She was done. 2 hours later, another message pinged in. Placed on administrative leave pending review. I sipped my wine. Still not a word from Meghan. Or my parents. Funny. They always had time to call when a bill needed paying, but silence reigned now that consequences had arrived. The next day, I received an email from an unknown address with the subject line, FYI, Brian. Attached was a screenshot from a Reddit thread. Someone had posted in a finance community about Brian, Meghan's new husband, who used to work in consulting. I worked with Brian a few years ago. Always threw assistants under the bus. Never owned up to his mess-ups. Looks like he's still making messes, just at fancier weddings. It had over 5,000 upvotes. The court of public opinion had convened. And its memory was long. By Tuesday, Meghan's old podcast interviews had resurfaced. You know the ones, where she preached about female empowerment, the importance of women supporting women, about dignity and grace. Now, they were being stitched next to her slapping her sister in a designer ballroom. Every frame a contradiction. Every frame a mirror. Then came the country club. West Haven Country Club, where my parents had been proud members for over 15 years, sent me a message through a mutual acquaintance. I'd never wanted anything to do with that place. But now? Now, they wanted to talk. Given recent events and member complaints, the board is reviewing Mr. and Mrs. Brooks' continued affiliation with the club. We apologize for the discomfort this causes. Discomfort? My parents used to say reputation was everything. That no matter how tired I was, I should smile at galas, dress appropriately, say the right things. Because reputation would protect me. But they never protected mine. They never imagined that I would be the one holding the match that exposed how flammable their paper-thin image truly was. An editorial followed that week in the Boston Ledger. A woman was publicly assaulted by her own sister for refusing to give up a home she built herself. In front of nearly 200 people. With no family member stepping in. This is not just a story of entitlement. It's the anatomy of emotional abuse, dressed up in pearls and wedding dresses. At the bottom, one line struck me like scripture. Success doesn't make someone cold. It's how others treat them that forces them to stand alone. I read it 5 times. Because that line, that was me. That was 31 years of holding my breath so my voice didn't come off rude. Of paying so I didn't seem ungrateful. Of succeeding, but not too much. Or else I'd be arrogant. The doorbell rang that evening. It was a courier. Envelope. Handwritten note. From Judge Rachel Whitmore. I opened it carefully. Taisha. What happened wasn't a scandal. It was a pattern finally caught on camera. Your silence was never weakness. But now, your voice is power. Let me know if you're ready to speak at our upcoming forum. We'd be honored. I sat there, letter in hand, lights off. Only the city glowing outside my windows. And I cried. Not out of pain. But because I finally knew. They picked the wrong woman to slap. I didn't respond to Judge Whitmore's letter that night. Not because I didn't want to. But because I knew once I stepped into that arena, once I said, yes, I'll speak, there'd be no returning to who I was before the wedding. The woman who kept her victories quiet so her family didn't feel small. The woman who sent money without ever demanding accountability. The woman who mistook endurance for love. That woman was gone. What replaced her wasn't rage. It wasn't even revenge. It was clarity. 3 days after the slap, Megan and Brian moved in with my parents in Quincy. That much I learned from a passive-aggressive Facebook post my aunt shared with a photo of a family dinner. Megan looked tired. My mother looked tense. Brian didn't even look at the camera. No captions. Just a quote. Home is where healing begins. The irony almost choked me. No one reached out directly. Not Megan. Not my mother. Not even my father, who used to call me to ask about stock tips but never once remembered my birthday. But the world was still calling. A producer from a nationally syndicated morning show messaged me. We're doing a segment on boundary setting, generational guilt, and emotional abuse in high-achieving families. Would you consider sharing your story anonymously or in studio? No. This wasn't a talk show moment. It was a reckoning. I didn't need to shout it to strangers in exchange for applause. I didn't need pity. I just needed to live without hiding anymore. So I stayed in. I canceled 2 brunches. Skipped a local legal gala. Kept my phone on Do Not Disturb. And then, exactly 1 week after the wedding, I got a text. From Megan. Just 4 words. Can we talk now? I stared at the screen. Read it. Reread it. Then set the phone down. And didn't respond. Because now wasn't when she wanted to talk. Now was when she needed to save face. Now was when the people she used to brag to had started whispering behind closed doors. Now was when she finally realized I wouldn't fold like I always had. So I let the silence speak. I didn't block her. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the message again. I left it there. A quiet gravestone for the version of me that used to drop everything to make others comfortable. During those 3 weeks, I didn't say a word publicly. No posts. No interviews. No threats. But I didn't have to. The internet remembered. People dug up old clips of Megan from work retreats, speaking at women's leadership events, posting photos with captions like "Support your sisters. We rise together." Now they were paired with the slap. Overlaid with the audio from a wedding guest whispering, she just asked her to give up her home. And people didn't forget. Her silence on the matter only made it worse. The comments became brutal. How can someone preach sisterhood and do that to her own blood? Toxic entitlement hiding under a designer dress. Imagine getting slapped for owning a penthouse you paid for. Then came the final break. Brian, her husband of just under a month, resigned from his job. Not fired. Resigned. Word had spread about his previous ethical issues. A client asked him bluntly during a strategy meeting, "How can we trust someone who condones abuse within their own family?" He had no answer. 3 days later, his resignation was submitted. That same day, Megan was let go from Bloom & Stone. Official reason? Conduct inconsistent with the brand's mission and ethical standards. Unofficial reason? The video wouldn't stop circulating. Every time they tried to post something positive, an ad campaign, a press release, it would be met with dozens of replies. Isn't this the agency that hired the woman who hit her sister on camera? Reputation was everything. And it had turned. Not because I destroyed them. But because I simply told the truth and didn't back down. As for my parents? They lost their country club membership 2 weeks after the wedding. West Haven sent a formal letter, Too many complaints. Too many members uncomfortable being associated with what was now dubbed the slap scandal. They tried to fight it, apparently. But no one wanted to sit beside them at fundraisers anymore. I imagined them at home, pacing. My mother probably blaming Megan. My father blaming me. Neither ever considering that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't who exposed it. It was what they built and tried to pass off as family. And me? I stayed. In my penthouse. Alone, yes. But more at peace than I'd ever been. I repurposed one of the guest rooms. The one my mother once called a waste for a single woman. I turned it into a reading room. A haven with floor pillows, bookshelves, soft jazz in the background. The second room? A mentoring space. Every Saturday, I invited senior law students, especially young black women navigating a system designed to wear them down, to come talk, strategize, and build their confidence. Not because I wanted to play savior. But because I knew how it felt to succeed with no one clapping for you. Each evening, I sat on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, watching the lights across the Charles River shimmer on the water. And for the first time, I felt still. Full. Whole. Not because I had one. But because I had stopped pretending I had to lose to keep others comfortable. It took just under a month for the house of cards they built to fully collapse. I didn't say a word. No interviews. No social media. No statements to the press. Because real power doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs to stop playing along. Megan and Brian's marriage quietly fell apart. No scandals. No dramatic posts. Just silence. Like even they had run out of energy for the performance. A friend of a friend, someone who used to intern at Megan's firm, texted me a blurry photo one day. Megan. Sitting alone at a cafe in Quincy. No makeup, hoodie pulled up, looking not like a woman in hiding, but like someone finally realizing there was no one left to clap for her. The caption underneath? Remember when she slapped her sister over a penthouse? She was a walking headline now. Not the kind she used to engineer for herself on LinkedIn. Not the boss babe posts, or the curated brunch shots with captions about living your truth. Now she was a symbol of the kind of sister who hits you when she can't control you. I didn't celebrate it. I just watched. From the balcony of the very apartment they said I didn't deserve. The one they tried to take. I spent less time wondering if they'd ever apologize, and more time wondering why I ever thought they would. That's the part that hurt most. Not the slap. Not the betrayal. The realization that I spent decades trying to earn a kind of love that was never going to come. I used to tell myself, they just don't understand me. That if I gave a little more, waited a little longer, I'd finally be accepted as one of them. But what if I was never meant to be? What if my real life, my real family, wasn't the one I was born into, but the one I built through boundaries, choices, and silent resilience? 3 weeks after the wedding, I got a call from Judge Rachel Whitmore again. I hadn't expected her to follow up. But she had. Taisha, she said gently. We'd love for you to speak at our upcoming panel. Theme is, when personal boundaries become collective action. At first, I hesitated. I still felt like the girl who grew up learning that silence kept things safe. That polite smiles and co-signed loans were love. That being difficult made me less valuable. But that girl didn't own a law firm with 20 employees. She didn't survive 3 jobs and a mountain of student debt without flinching. And she sure as hell didn't get slapped across the face and then stand taller. So I said yes. The panel was small. Local. But packed with the kind of people who matter, young professionals, advocacy leaders, women who'd been told their whole lives that being quiet was safer than being whole. I stood behind the podium and told the story, not as gossip, not as a viral moment, but as a mirror. Sometimes, I said, the people who raised you also raised the version of you that constantly doubts if she's worthy of peace. There were nods. Tears. One woman stood up and said, "You made me realize I've never set a boundary without apologizing." That stayed with me. Because that used to be me, too. I went home that night and walked through the penthouse slowly. Room by room. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter I installed myself. Looked out the window that faced the river. Sat on the couch where I'd spent too many nights wondering if I was ungrateful for choosing peace over people. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect. But because for the first time, I wasn't questioning if I deserved any of it. That weekend, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a velvet box. Cheap but neat. I opened it carefully. Inside was a gold locket. The kind you'd buy at a department store. The kind you'd engrave if you were trying to perform care. Inside was a single line, etched in small, block letters. "We're still family." No name. No note. No apology. Just that sentence. I dropped it in the trash without blinking. Because love without accountability isn't love. It's leverage. And I wasn't giving mine away anymore. A year ago, I would have read into that locket. I would have dissected it. What does it mean? Is she trying? Is this an olive branch? But I didn't need symbols anymore. I needed action. And the truth was, there had never been any. That cheap gold locket wasn't love. It was a guilt grenade disguised as sentiment. I didn't even flinch as it hit the trash bin. A few days later, I found out where it came from. Not directly, of course. But through an email. From a name I hadn't seen in years. Veronica Dale, my cousin. We'd grown up together, spent summers at Grandma's house, whispered in bunk beds about dreams bigger than the neighborhood we were told not to outgrow. Then life happened. I went to law school. She stayed close to home. We lost touch. Her message was brief. Ty. Megan dropped a package at my house. Said to send it to you. I debated whether I should. But after everything, I figured you deserved to know where it really came from. I'm sorry for what they've put you through. V. That was all. No drama. Just truth. Quiet. Honest. Rare. Funny how people who barely stayed in your life could still offer more kindness than those who claimed to love you most. I sat on my balcony that night and watched a tugboat drift across the Charles. Its lights blinking like Morse code across the water. I sipped my wine and didn't check my phone once. It buzzed twice. I let it. The world could wait. That next morning, I received something unexpected. A letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. Typed, signed, postmarked. From the West Haven Country Club. It wasn't addressed to me directly, but I was copied for transparency. It was a notice of termination. My parents' membership had been officially revoked. The reason? Ongoing concerns from the membership body regarding recent public behavior that reflects poorly on the club's values of respect, dignity, and decorum. No one said my name. But I didn't need to be named to be heard anymore. The weight of the consequences finally hit them. Megan couldn't get rehired anywhere reputable in advertising. Word spread. Agencies were scared. No one wanted to risk hiring the face of a scandal, even if her name was never officially attached. Clients had memories longer than contracts. Brian? He opened a small consulting business out of his parents' garage. Posted daily on LinkedIn, trying to make inspiration from ashes. But no one commented. And every now and then, someone would post the video. Just the slap. No words. Just the truth. And my parents? They shrank. They stopped attending events. Stopped hosting dinners. My father resigned from the neighborhood board he once chaired. My mother closed her Instagram account, the one she used to curate like a Vogue editor, complete with captions about raising strong daughters. Now there were no new posts. No tagged photos. No smiling brunches with Megan in matching pastel. Silence. But not peace. There's a difference. Their silence wasn't graceful. It was resentful. Not once did they call. Not once did they say my name again in any space that would require them to confront their own failures. I wasn't surprised. That kind of love only works when you're giving. Not when you're standing. And I was standing now. Stronger than ever. One evening, I walked through the penthouse. Room by room. I let my hand brush across the framed degrees on my wall, not because I needed the validation, but because I'd finally stopped feeling like I had to downplay them to keep others comfortable. I paused at my favorite spot by the window. The city below pulsed with life. People rushing home. Horns. Lights. Everything moving like it always did. Except for me. I was still. But not stuck. Still like someone who didn't need to keep running to prove they belonged. Still like someone who had nothing to explain to anyone anymore. That night, I typed a short journal entry in my phone. Just for me. They don't hate me. They just don't love me the way I needed them to. And that's not my failure. That's theirs. And that's when I realized something. All those years, I thought the fear was being alone. But the real fear had been this. What if they never saw me at all? Now I know they didn't. They saw a wallet. A lifeline. A story they could rewrite to suit their comfort. Until I stopped letting them hold the pen. It's been over a year now. A full year since the slap that echoed louder than 1,000 arguments. Since the glass shattered across that ballroom floor like a final curtain call on a play I never auditioned for. Since I stopped being the daughter who explained. The sister who excused. The woman who endured. And something funny happened in that year. They disappeared. Not entirely. Not physically. I still see traces, mutual acquaintances, an occasional tagged photo at a small event in Quincy, a forwarded newsletter that includes my mother's name in a charity donor list from a lifetime ago. But in all the ways that mattered, they were gone. Megan and Brian divorced quietly last spring. No drama. No statement. Just a quiet removal of last names on social media, photos archived, wedding hashtags deleted. As if they were erasing the evidence of everything they'd hoped to gain. Word was they separated after the third job rejection for Megan, when even her freelance attempts were tanking. Agencies politely declined. One even sent a form email back, not aligned with brand values. Brian lasted a little longer in his solo practice. But clients were cautious. One too many times, a Google search unearthed a clip they couldn't ignore. The slap that silenced the room. The penthouse she wouldn't surrender. The sister who stood still, and still won. They say you can't run from the internet. But I've learned, you also can't run from the truth. And eventually, it catches up with everyone. My parents? They moved to a smaller apartment on the South Shore. Not by choice. Their standing in every social circle had quietly crumbled. The clubs, the fundraisers, the neighbors they used to clink glasses with on summer nights, none of them answered anymore. I never heard from them again. No letter. No voicemail. Not even on my birthday. And still. I felt freer than ever. I started doing Saturday morning lectures at Northeastern's law school. One student, a shy girl with a nervous voice, stayed after class one day and whispered, "I'm the first in my family to go to college. They say I'm too ambitious. That I'm acting better than them." I looked her in the eyes and told her what I wish someone had told me. Your light isn't too bright. They're just used to living in the dark. She cried. So did I. Not because I was sad. But because I knew now that my story wasn't mine alone. It never had been. It was for every woman who paid for the wedding she wasn't invited to. Every sister asked to step aside so someone else could shine. Every daughter who got called selfish the moment she chose herself. I didn't become loud. I didn't become bitter. I became unmovable. That spring, I was invited to speak on a national panel for women in law. The title of my talk? When Success is a Quiet Revolution. I stood on stage, told the truth, not the viral version, not the headlines. Just the truth. I wasn't slapped because I was selfish. I was slapped because I stopped apologizing for what I earned. The room stood still when I said that. And I knew I'd never go back. That same night, I walked back into my penthouse, kicked off my shoes, and opened a fresh bottle of red. I looked around at the space they all said was too big for one woman. The reading room was now filled with books donated by Ments. The mentoring office had photos on the wall, every law student who'd sat across from me, every young woman who once questioned if she belonged. And the balcony? It belonged to no one but me. Sometimes, the air still feels heavy with memories. The dinner table where no one asked how I was doing. The phone calls that only came when they needed a signature. The echo of "You'll grow old alone" said with so much certainty, as if love was conditional on compliance. But now, I know better. Because love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't slap you when you say no. And it doesn't beg you to give away your peace so others can pretend they built something they never lifted a finger for. I'll never forget what Megan said that day. You'll grow old alone in that apartment. No one will even remember you existed. And yet, here I am. Not only remembered, but respected. Not only alone, but at peace. Not forgotten, but finally, fully, seen. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about reclamation. About what happens when a woman stops waiting to be chosen and chooses herself instead. When she says, enough, not in anger, but in absolute certainty that her worth is no longer up for negotiation. So here's what I know now. They taught me silence. I taught them consequence. And in the end, I didn't just keep my penthouse. I kept my power. What Taisha did wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was necessary. Because sometimes, the greatest form of resistance isn't yelling. It's choosing peace when the world demands performance. It's refusing to surrender what you've earned just because someone else wants it. It's knowing that the people who call you selfish for protecting yourself were never safe to begin with. So what do you think? Is silence the strongest form of resistance in toxic families? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of reclaiming power and dignity, right here on Revenge Echoes.